Good evening, everybody. This is Stevie J from AngryMarks.com with your post-2013 SummerSlam pay-per-view recap and results. Let's start out with the pre-show match. It was scheduled to be RVD versus Dean Ambrose, but I think we all knew that at some point the Shield was going to come out, and when they did, Mark Henry and Big Show came out to counter them, but it did not turn into a 3-on-3. It still proceeded as a singles match for the U.S. title, but eventually the Shield interfered and caused the DQ, and Dean Ambrose retains even though RVD won. Now, you may have thought that would lead to a 3-on-3 on pay-per-view. I certainly did, but I guess apparently due to time constraints they didn't want to do that, or they decided to do it on Raw tomorrow night, so no 3-on-3 at the Staples Center on this evening. That was the only big thing going on the pre-show, other than the panelists, which were Shawn Michaels with a very bushy beard, Vicky Guerrero, Booker T, and Josh Matthews as the MC for the panel. So, we move on to the pay-per-view. Bray Wyatt vs. Kane in the Ring of Fire was the first match to televise on pay-per-view, which makes sense when you think about it, given the complexity of setting up the Ring of Fire and the fact that they wouldn't want it to be in the way for the rest of the show, so you kind of had to get it out of the way first. Now, the gimmick here was that they had firemen at ringside for the safety of the performers and the crowd, and of course the Wyatt family used that to their advantage. First, they tried to put out the flames on one side of the ring with a fire extinguisher, but they lit right back up. Then they got a fire safety blanket and threw it over the flames. That worked. They were able to rush into the ring, triple team Kane, beat him down. Bray Wyatt got the pin, and then they dragged him out of the ring over to the rocking chair, put him across some steel steps, grabbed another set of steel steps, and just demolished Kane. Then Bray Wyatt lit his lantern, the lights went out, and he and the Wyatt family left. So Bray Wyatt and the Wyatt family got put over strong in the opener on pay-per-view. Next up was Damien Sandow versus Cody Rhodes with nothing but pride on the line. Sandow cut a promo before the match saying that every team that's Batman and Robin has a weak sidekick, and Cody Rhodes was my weak sidekick. Cody Rhodes proved otherwise, though. He hit the crossroads and pinned Sandow 1-2-3. And incidentally, Cody Rhodes has gone clean shaven, so now he can really be called a babyface. Will Sandow put the briefcase on the line to get a rematch and get his pride back? We shall see. Coming third on the card, much to the displeasure of some, was Christian challenging Alberto Del Rio for the World Heavyweight title. Come on now. It's the SmackDown title. We all know this is going to happen. It's never the main event of a pay-per-view, except back in the days when they used to have SmackDown-only pay-per-views, and whatever title was on SmackDown would be the main event of those pay-per-views. But as long as they have two world titles, the WWE title, or the one that's on Raw, is always going to go last. Anyway, it didn't stop it from being a great match with a lot of near falls, and Christian was teasing the spear but wasn't able to get it, and Alberto Del Rio was teasing the arm breaker. And finally it led to Christian getting the spear but jacking up his arm in the process, which Alberto Del Rio immediately locked the cross arm breaker onto. And it looked like Christian might have had a visual pin when Del Rio was going for it, but the referee was looking at him to tap out and not looking at whose shoulders was on the mat. So, in effect, it didn't matter. Alberto Del Rio got Christian to tap and retained the World Heavyweight title. He cut a promo where he said Mexican people need a hero, and they need somebody to look up to and something to believe in, and he's willing to be the hero for his people. He's a champion. He's somebody they can believe in. So I think they're trying to go the Bret Hart route here, when Bret was a heel to the U.S. audience, but a huge babyface in Canada. I think they're trying to play that dual role with Del Rio and see if they can pull it off. And you know what? It's probably a better direction than anything else they've done with Del Rio of late. If they can get him over as a face somewhere and a heel for the rest of the U.S. audience, that is probably the most effective use of him. So I say, by all means, WWE, give it a try, see if it pans out. Next, we got highlights from SummerSlam Access, where Maria Menounos teamed with Natalya to beat Brie Bella and Eva Marie. And then, of course, Maria was backstage talking about it, but who should interrupt but Fandango with Summer Rae. They started to do the ballroom dancing. Miz took exception. grabbed Maria and went in front of them to do their own dance, and Fandango was pissed. But you know what? This was one of the few times that The Miz didn't annoy me. It was the perfect response to Fandango. I thought it was funny, so I give 2 thumbs up to The Miz and to Maria Menounos for this segment. This led to a one-on-one match that was pretty much cotton candy fluff. It was Natalya versus Eva Marie with the Funkadactyls in Natalya's corner and the Bella Twins in Eva's corner. Natty won with a sharpshooter on her second try. At the beginning of the pay-per-view, when The Miz introduced himself as host, he teased 2 main events for tonight, but apparently main event doesn't mean the same thing to everybody because this one came in the middle of the pay-per-view. In fact, it wasn't even 9:30 Eastern yet when Brock Lesnar versus CM Punk started. And this was a wild brawl because during the pre-show, Paul Heyman announced that he had gotten a no disqualification stipulation added to the match, so they did everything to each other and went everywhere. It got physical very quickly. It wound up with some wild spots like Brock Lesnar throwing Punk across one announce table and another, and everybody on both tables just running for cover. A steel chair was introduced into the match later on, and both guys used it effectively. And Paul Heyman tried to interfere and use the steel chair himself, but Punk stepped on it, and Heyman tried to swat his leg away to get the chair back, but he was unsuccessful. This was what ultimately led to Brock Lesnar getting the win because Punk pulled him up, punched his lights out, and put on the Anaconda Vice, but Heyman was not the legal man in the match, of course, so it didn't matter what he did to Heyman. Lesnar walloped him with the chair several times, hit the F5 onto it, and got the pin. So they sent Brock Lesnar out strong, which makes sense given that we probably won't see him again until WrestleMania next year, and Punk can get back his heat any way he wants. Maybe he'll even beat up Heyman on Raw, who knows. Next, we had an intergender tag, Dolph Ziggler and Caitlyn versus AJ Lee and Big E Langston. Kind of a nothing match, to be honest with you, and not surprising given where it was positioned on this pay-per-view, given it came before the top of the hour and before the other main event. So, basically, Ziggler counters the big ending and hits the zigzag to get the pin. That's all there is to say. Then at last, the moment you've all been waiting for, John Cena versus Daniel Bryan with the WWE title on the line and Triple H as the referee. And Triple H showed a lot of latitude in this match, letting them go all over the place and do all sorts of things to each other that you know might have caused a disqualification if it weren't a big match with the WWE title on the line. After a match that went at least 25 minutes with tons of near falls, Bryan was finally able to get Cena worn down to the point that he could hit a running knee and pin him for 3 and win the WWE title. Cena spun him around as he was celebrating with the title, offered him a handshake, and Bryan accepted. Triple H offered him a handshake as well. He accepted that. Maybe he should have known better. Randy Orton came down the ramp with his Money in the Bank briefcase, teased cashing it in. Bryan begged him to run in the ring and do something. Orton started to back away, then turned and looked slowly over his shoulder as if he was signaling something, and he was. Triple H kicked him in the gut, gave him a pedigree, and left Bryan laying on the mat. Orton ran down, handed him the briefcase. Triple H called for the bell to ring. Orton rolled him over and easily pinned him 1, 2, 3. So, 2 WWE title changes in one pay-per-view. Daniel Bryan beats John Cena, but Randy Orton cashes in and beats Daniel Bryan. People in the bar were chanting, "Evolution, Evolution." I don't know if they're reuniting that faction and that's where they're going with this. I think they're just looking to make Triple H the heel and, believe it or not, make Vince McMahon the babyface to culminate in a 6-month build to WrestleMania next year. Triple H versus whoever Vince McMahon picks to be his puppet in the match. Whatever, that's what they're going to do. They want McMahon's in the pay-per-view for WrestleMania 30 because it's a big number to them, so that's what they're going to do. And that's your SummerSlam 2013 report. I give the show 2 thumbs up because there were some really good matches on there. I enjoyed Bray Wyatt going over strong. I enjoyed the main event with Bryan and Cena, even with the screwjob finish. Christian versus Del Rio was above average, and everything else was acceptable. So, nothing to complain about here. It was a good show. Just wondering if they're going to do that 3-on-3 with RVD, Big Show, and Mark Henry taking on the Shield on Raw, but we'll find out tomorrow night. And be sure to stay tuned for the Raw reaction afterwards on AngryMarks.com, where Angry Tensai and Big Vic will break down the show and let you know what happened. Be sure to subscribe to AngryMarks.com for your wrestling and MMA news, interviews, and recaps. Coming up this Thursday, we'll have Sheldon Goldberg from NECW. You won't want to miss that show. For now, peace out.